We had officially stopped selling franchise locations because we had sold 998 in the United States. And after checking it this morning, 46 locations sold in Canada.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Compound Wisdom. I'm your host, Steve Sood. Today, I'm joined by Shea Fears, Director of Corporate Locations at Game Day Men's Health, and literally probably one of the first employees behind the brand as well. Shay's path is awesome. She's been with Game Day for about 6 years, longer than anybody besides the CEO, Evan Miller himself. Not only did she help build a second location in Temecula, but she's helped build hundreds and hundreds of locations nationwide and now internationally with Game Day as well. She wears probably 50,000 hats, has done everything from marketing to the president hat and every single thing in between, and is now launching the women's side of the brand too. In this episode today, we'll break down really what it takes to build a healthcare franchise from the inside, why hormone optimization is where medicine is moving, and really how you protect the clinic experience while scaling fast, and why Her Way Health and hormones is going to be the next chapter for their model as well. Shea, welcome to Compound Wisdom. Shea, thank you for being a guest on Compound Wisdom. Now, one of the first things I want to hear about is really your story and how you started with Game Day.
It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, so, my story kind of goes back almost 6 years. September this year is going to be 6 years with Game Day, and I started out about a year and a half after Game Day was officially formed by our founder, Evan Miller. Started out just kind of in administration and operations. And I had worked in healthcare for about 10 to 12 years before that. But I really was looking for a space, moving outside of like traditional Western medicine and being able to grow in my own, field, in my own niche, and really kind of dive into more, cash pay concierge kind of clinic setting. And really, Game Day kind of landed in my lap. They were in my hometown in Temecula, California, and they were actually just about to open up their second facility about a year and a half after they started in 2018 in Carlsbad. So that's kind of where I started, and pretty much grew from there. This is dated a couple years before we really franchised as well.
That's awesome. So it took from the first location to the second location, it took a year and a half.
Yeah, it took a year and a half. Yeah, and it's interesting because when I started, it was the heart of COVID. It was right after COVID hit, and one reason why, and it's so interesting to where we are today now. One reason why I think it took about a year and a half is because it was just one guy trying to figure out this men's TRT clinic, and back then, 7-8 years ago, TRT clinics wasn't really a thing. It wasn't, sure, peptides have been around for, ages, and testosterone therapy has been around for ages, even if it felt a little more taboo back then, but it really, especially brick and mortar, it wasn't a thing. And so really, it was just our founder just trying to make, build the pavement for what, it is now. But, when COVID hit, it was really interesting when I started because, and I remember it so clearly, it was one of those things where we're like, oh crap, we're going to slow down. I don't know if this is even going to be a successful clinic at this point too, Carlsbad and Temecula. And every night we would leave that clinic thinking the next day, again, being cash pay, everybody's on reoccurring membership models. We're just going to have red Christmas lights of decline payments. And every single day, we just grew and we grew and we grew. It was it was honestly really amazing to kind of see that happen. And then, we went through the whole COVID boom where everybody just started really taking a step back. And I think maybe because everybody was working from home, but they were like, I'm gaining weight. I'm not feeling good about myself, And so I think everybody naturally pivoted through COVID to really wanting to spend a little bit more, invest a little bit more into their own bodies and their own future, in the healthcare realms, and that's really kind of how I started with Game Day. And, kind of fast forward to 2022, we were about 4 or 5 clinics in at that point. And, I helped open our clinics much faster when I was involved. Because, we had opened up 2 to 3 in probably a 2-year span, in comparison to that first one for the first year and a half, before
Yeah.
Temecula opened.
And, I want you to touch on like 2022. You said how many did you guys have in 2022?
We had about 5. Hmm.
5. So how many you
Yeah.
have now? And then, kind of what sprung, I mean, what really caused the hyper growth from 2022 to even today?
Yeah. So, really it was right around 2021, 2022, we were about 4 or 5 corporate locations in. Really, Evan Miller, our founder, who's also, he's been a mentor for me for, definitely the last 6 years. He kind of took a look at me and one other individual who was on our team, who I also mentored, kind of internally. And he's just like, hey, he's like, I think we're going to franchise this thing.
Yeah.
And the funniest part about that is like none of us knew much about
Okay.
franchising. None of us had worked in a franchise model. We really didn't have a ton of acquaintances at that time that were like just living, eating, breathing franchise model. And so we were like, okay, let's do it, and then fast forward a year, they were definitely, the one other individual on our team and our founder were just kind of cold call, like one of our first franchise owners was a patient of ours that just loved what we do. And they were like, I want to be a part of this brand. How can I do that? We have quite a few, at this point, we have quite a few franchise owners that became franchise administrators through being a patient first and their friends. I mean, it just kind of trickle affected. But, so we started out at that time, 2022, we had about 5 locations, all in Southern California, all within 45 minutes to an hour of each other. And, we started selling franchises. And I think 1 year in, we were like at 600 franchises sold. And we took a step back one day, and I'll never forget this. And we just looked at each other. We had a couple of other people on our team at this point too, still not as many as we probably needed. We just sat in our HQ and we just took a step back. We're real big whiteboarders, like all of us. We just love whiteboarding. Yeah. And so we were, putting out our our numbers and our, just a couple of like strategy sessions on the whiteboard. And we just kind of stopped and we looked at each other and we're like, holy crap, we just sold 600 franchise brick and mortar locations. This is nuts. And to us, outside agencies like franchise sales organizations and other franchise corporate models, franchisors, if you will, they were like, holy crap, you just sold 600 in a single year. Because it was. I mean, that's an impressive, really crazy number. And then we just kept selling more and more and more, and we used to do something, which a lot of franchise models will do this. It's called confirmation day. And so as you're selling franchises, you will host a confirmation day at a select location. Some people do it virtual. We liked it to be in person. And we would, all of these people interested in franchises would fly out, and we used to do it one weekend a month. And then, we would have probably 30 people, or like 30 ownership groups come out in, really looking at specific territories that they wanted to purchase. And then it grew from 30 to like 60. And then it grew from 60 ownership groups. That's not just people. That's like, could be 90 people. It grew from 30 to 60. And then it grew from 1 to 2 times a month. And like every month over month, we just kept going and going and going. And, I think what was like so incredible about it is that men and women, the men and women that were, kind of coming forth, they would bring resumes. Some of them would do, husbands and wives would bring full-blown family videos that you would like watch on, I forgot what that show's called, but, it's like kind of good entertainment, good, like good feeling entertainment. And just, hey, this is who we are. This is my family. Here's my dogs. This is what we do on vacation. And this is why I should be chosen for this territory. They were so passionate, and they still are. And I think that's like something that, in the background, as we began to really skyrocket, which obviously happened pretty quick, one thing that we really heard a lot of is a lot of the noise, is what we used to call it. You guys are never going to make it. How are you guys going to handle all of this volume? How are you guys going to support all of these people? How are you guys going to, there was just so much noise in the background. And it was a little bit of that, because we have that personality, that noise like that, lights a fire under us in a really good way. But I think it was also seeing how passionate these franchise owners were and how much love that they were going to bring to the table in their communities. Like, that probably lit a fire under us more than anything else could have, as they were sharing in that common denominator that we all had. And so really, 2023, almost 2020, maybe about 2024, we had officially stopped selling franchise locations because we had sold 998 in the United States. And after checking it this morning, 46 locations sold in Canada. So we are international. And I don't know if that's ever, yeah, thank you. I don't know if it's ever been done, especially not in the time frame that, we kind of made it happen.
Yeah. Not unless you're like, 7-Eleven or Subway or something. I think that's a little bit different, but that's amazing. Now, I know you guys are hyper focused. Obviously, game days all around men. And, what are you guys doing around women?
Yeah. So it's interesting because we had gone to a couple of conferences. This is like around the time we were at like 400 to 600 franchises sold. And we'd go to a couple conferences to really watch and see how other founders are trying to get their franchise model off and, running. And one thing we would see a lot of, and they would come up to us strategically, I think, and they would really say, oh, yeah, we're going to do women's. We're going to do women's. I think there's so much around women's. And it was interesting around that time, because I think a lot of, people that were really intrigued by what we were doing and really wanted to understand how we were doing it. Even though we were building the plane while we were flying it, we were trying to figure it out too.
Best way to do it.
Yeah, I think they had that resonation where they're like, well, maybe we shouldn't do men's though, because I think they are like gonna blow it out of the field over here. And so a lot of them were pivoting to the women's side, but it's complex. And so one of those things that I really kind of took back in, and I was, working in my presidency role at Game Day at the time. And I just remember, hearing this, and it was multiple times people would bring up, we're going to do women's, we're going to do women's.
Are these franchisees that are saying that, or who's saying this exactly?
These are other potential franchise models that are popping up. People that want to franchise their business. And so they would go to these conferences and they would get in front of these franchise sales organization panels, and they would, basically pitch their business. And then they'll have like dinner and stuff like that, So, and it was just interesting because I remember telling, Evan Miller, our founder, over and over, I'm like, Evan, we gotta do something about the women's. We gotta do it, or else we're gonna be too late. Like, we just have to do it. And he was down. He's definitely one of those visionaries. Like, if it makes sense and it's gonna be right for the patient, let's just do it. We'll figure it out on the way. And that's how I operate, at a very high level. And so, half visionary, half operator is kind of how I lead, and I direct my teams, and I just make things happen. And so we just decided to do it, And so we started Her Way Health and Hormones, which is a testosterone therapy clinic. We haven't franchised it yet, but they're trying to franchise it probably end of summer or end of this year. And it's an awesome, it's like a med spa. It's absolutely beautiful. I used to always make jokes about the clinic difference inside the clinic between Game Day and Her Way. The cool thing is, like, at our Carlsbad location, which is the first location we've ever opened in Game Day, that is where we have our first Her Way Health and Hormones. You walk up the stairs, You go to the right, open the door, you're inside her way. You go to the left, you open the door, and there's game day. And so I've always called it, our Jack and Jill model. And I always like tease all the patients because it's a lot of like husband and wives, they go to their own respective practitioner. But, if you walk into her, it's like bright and it's airy and it's beautiful. And then you walk into game day and it's kind of like, darker, more like ESPN and, totally different color vibe, which is a big reason why we wanted to separate it as well, too. Just so, like I talk about this with our team all the time, game day and her way, this is a third space for people. And, not a lot of people know about third space. That is outside of work and school. Like, where's your third space? Some people, it's like, my third space is Disneyland. My third space is my local coffee shop. They all know me there and I just love being there. It's my sanctuary. Well, like game day in her way is for a lot of our patients, it's their third space. It's where they feel comfortable walking inside. So
amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Okay. So you're going to basically separate it out, have the women's brand. That's awesome. I want you to touch on some of the medications that you guys offer. Obviously, on the game day side, and then what you're going to offer on the women's side, which is a conversation in itself on women's health and HRT for women. Men, very simple. You do testosterone. Women, it's all symptom based. It's very, very complex, as you already know.
Mm-hmm.
So touch on both of those things for me.
Yeah, I think, diving into the testosterone treatment, one thing that I've learned, because obviously I grew into an expert, right? An operational expert on men's health and men's hormone therapy, but I learned a lot very fast with her way. And I like to explain testosterone treatment as simple as possible. Men and women both have testosterone and they both have estrogen, and they need both. Men have this much testosterone and women have this much, and men, have this much estrogen and women need this much estrogen. It all plays a role in your, your health and your future and precursors to heart disease. Like, it's very important to keep those, kind of markers, where they're supposed to be at an optimal level. So, testosterone therapy, even though it feels like women, are much more complex, it's just fine tuning. And we do that at game day too, right? Because it's like none of this stuff is cookie cutter. And so that's what's so special about cash pay medicine as well, is that you're removing that cookie cutter feeling outside of that traditional Western medicine, walking into white walls and having a time limit on how long you can talk to the doctor. And then walking out, not really understanding what you were given or how to take it, how long to take it for, what are the side effects. And so, testosterone treatment, it's very, very safe. There's some really huge things that have come out recently about, removing it from the black label, box warning, and just so much really, really good stuff around testosterone treatment. But really, I mean, some of the other things that have become super popular, that have already kind of been popular, I think, for men, but I think are really twisting into this female-focused turntable is peptides,
Oh, yeah.
Peptides is huge.
Like the hottest word around.
It is. It really is. And it kind of plays a role into like biohacking and methylation and, all of these things that if you don't really understand what all of this is, it could be really confusing. And then also turn to things like Reddit, and there's a lot of misconception about what these things are, and so one of the things that I do, especially when I'm talking to our patients, and they just need some like reassurance or, hey, yeah, I forgot what the provider told me, like, can you kind of help me out here? But I really like to just really dumb it down. It doesn't have to be very complicated. Peptides act like a text message. It's a chain of an amino acid that acts like a text message in your body. It's telling your body to do something that it already does, but may have slowed down due to aging. I mean, it really, truly is as simple as that. And so, yeah, peptides are huge. Smorlin is like an absolutely incredible peptide. One other thing that we
get it from Smorlin.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, it's a great peptide. It's been around for a really long time, I think eventually a lot of other peptides are going to become available. But, another big portion of what we do is sexual health and sexual performance. And I think, again, it's one of those things where it's kind of taboo. People don't really talk about it a lot. Or they're embarrassed to even walk through the doors and admit that they might have a problem. You know, I've seen just grown men walk into our rooms, and women too, but like I've seen grown men walk into our rooms and just bawl in front of the providers because their marriage is shattering due to these issues, you know? And it's like one of those things, if somebody has, you know, diabetes for X amount of years, over time, they're going to have plaque buildup in the vessels. And so what happens with that is they will start to, you know, for most part, they will start to develop ED. So it's just, you know, and there's other components to it as well too. And that's one thing that was very, very important for us to really develop on the women's side as well too, because, you know, there's such a misconception around like women have an OBGYN. Like what else do they need?
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
a lot of our OBs are turning into, you know, endocrinologist thinking cap of like, hey, these women need estrogen. They need testosterone therapy. They need progesterone, potentially, depending on your life stage. One thing that was really interesting to me one time before we really launched Her Way, it was like, we knew we were going to do it. We had it, you know, kind of marked on our whiteboard. We were like, we're going for it. We're going to do it. It's going to be great. It's going to be complicated. We're going to figure it out. I went over to, it was a Christmas party that we did like a big game day booth. And, you know, I wear 50,000 hats, but I'll still go to events sometimes and do ground marketing with the team. And we were still really early on with franchising as well, too. So I had gone to LA to this big Christmas party for the LA County Jail. And I was with another franchise location and their staff. So I was kind of representing just corporate, just to be there and help support and talk about game day. And I had a lady come up to me, and she was very, very high up at the LA County Jail. And mind you, this party was filled with, you know, all of the police officers, the DA agents, or I guess not DE, DA, the DA, district attorneys, the judges. I mean, just everybody you could think of that has to do with LA County Jail. There was also some firefighters and stuff like that as well too. But this lady had come up to me, and she was very, very high up, and she pulled me aside and she's like, I see what you guys are doing. One of my friends, husband, goes to game day. But she started whispering, and she's like, I have to ask you, like, do you guys have plans for us women? And she almost like broke out into tears. She's like, I travel to Tijuana right now, all the way from LA, and I go and get my testosterone treatment done there. She's like, I have nowhere to turn. And she's like, none of my girlfriends in multiple other states, they have nowhere to go. OBs turn us away. Endocrinologists turn us away. We don't have anywhere to go. And, you know, the big difference between men and females is men may not ever have a deficiency to testosterone, but women will eventually go through that life cycle change and go through perimenopause, menopause, and then eventually postmenopause. It's just a life stage that we go through. And so that like broke me. That was like, I like remember leaving, and I was like late at night, and I called my mentor, and I'm like, this is it. This is the sign. We have to do this. You know, and so that was like something really, really touching to, you know, we knew it was so important to bring testosterone therapy. And really, eventually we were like, we have to make this a household name. And that's kind of where we are today.
Yeah. That's amazing. You guys have done just such great things in the, you know, in this industry. I love it. Do you guys have all of your providers in-house currently, or what do you guys do for that?
So, as far as like, do you mean by like the franchise or just corporate?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, both, I guess.
Yeah. So the way that our model really works is every franchise administrator, we call them franchise administrators because we are a corporate practice of medicine, you know, a business model. So every practice has its own medical director. We're very hands off with it, you know, as the franchisor. So let's say somebody owns, you know, 20 clinics up and down South Florida. They will have their own set of staff owned by their medical director. And then, you know, that they're their own little entity. So that's kind of the way it works. I know a lot of franchise models, especially, med spas, they have like regional medical directors, and we didn't go that route, but it's worked out really well for us because one of the things that we made happen is, yes, they're all different medical entities and they're owned separately and they kind of just deal with it on their own. But one thing we've kind of cultivated is like this really big network of game day providers. Because at the end of
Yeah.
the day,
Yeah.
even though, different states have different regulations and we have to be really careful of like making sure that those clinics in those states are doing it the way that they're supposed to do. Because it might be, Arkansas might be a little bit different than California or Arizona. And so, but we really have cultivated not only this huge subset of game day providers, so nurse practitioners and PAs. One thing we also cultivated is this like really, really awesome medical advisory board. We have a huge medical advisory board, and some of them are actual owners and medical directors. Some are just medical directors. And I think we have like maybe one mid-level, one provider, or maybe two that have been with us for a very long time. They're very knowledgeable, but they just love game day. They love our, making sure that our medical compliance is super tight for our patients, that we have the best patient experience. And they love peptides. They love biohacking. They love testosterone therapy, fitness and wellness and all of the things that really make up what we do. So yeah, we are kind of all separate, but we're all kind of also one together to, kind of under one roof.
Wonderful. Yeah, I can just feel the synergy just when I listen to you talk. That's awesome. Are you guys doing anything around stem cells, or do you have any plans to?
Yeah, not at the moment. No. As we know, stem cells is a little tricky just because of the regulations over stem cells. Um, at the moment, we're kind of letting other, big players really, kind of be the big player in the stem cell game. We've talked about it like so many different times, but, we've gotten to the size and being so big. We really want to do everything like
Legitimate.
100%
Yeah.
exactly how we need to. And it's hard. We're in multiple states. Across the country. And it's really, really hard doing things like stem cells where like maybe a couple states it might be okay and a couple states it's not. And they're all so intricate. And there's lots of nuances around it. So at this time, we're kind of, on hold for stem cell.
Awesome. Now, obviously, you're launching the women's brand. What are some things down the pipeline for game day listeners, and then also for you as well personally?
Yeah. So when it comes to, her way, I really kind of helped build the vision, build the model. I kind of,
I can
turned it
tell
into
just by the
what
passion.
it is today. Yeah. And then really about a year ago when they really needed a lot of help on the game day side, I kind of shifted away from her way and kind of just handed the baby over to, another really, really awesome group of individuals that really specialize in it too. So I know they have like a lot of things kind of cooking up for her way. I think for me personally, as we kind of, as we know, the corporate locations is so, so important in a franchise model. Um, Not only because, this is where it stems from and we're the flagship, but
You're the guinea
this is
pigs too.
really
You get to
we're the
test
guinea
everything.
pigs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some I'm like pretty excited about, and others I'm like, do we really have to trial that out? But we do it, we do it anyways with a smile, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't, but I think personally for me, just continuing to grow as a leader is so important for me. I learn things that are new every single day, not even just operationally, but within myself. And also personally too, game day has, especially in the last year and a half, game day has really changed my life because of this whole peptide. I'm not on any peptides right now, but I've also lost like a ton of weight and I've, go to the gym every day. It was very hard to do that in the beginning because I was working around the clock. All of my staff used to go to work the next day and say, "Oh, little Shay's email witching hours," because I would like go home and I would have so much to like catch up on, and or else I'm going to go back to work the next day and I'm going to have just a huge pile of stuff to get into. So, I really have been super focused on my own personal brand, and my identity and who that is. Because for a long time, my identity was game day. And it's still, that's still a huge part of who I am. One thing that our founder, Evan Miller, would say all the time in calls, on the stage at these confirmation meetings is, Shea is the heartbeat of game day, like point blank, like she is the heartbeat of game day. And so I resonate with that on a very, very, very deep personal level. And it is kind of who I am. It's been who I am the last 6 years. And there's been tons of people that have like worked jobs for 6, 8, 10, 12 years, but it might not be as special as how I feel about where, who I am today. I wouldn't be in the place I am today without having my mentor and being able to go through all the ups and downs, not even just through the franchise, but just running medicine clinics. Like, it's hard. It's not the same running restaurants or, other types of, service industry franchises. It's really hard. Medicine evolves and you have to adapt. You have to pivot. It's kind of like a restaurant going through, a food recall. You have to immediately react to it.
Yeah.
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 And so, I'm a pretty quick adapter and I work really fast. It's like one thing everybody jokes about of all of us on our team at game day. And I don't know if it's like from Evan, like, or what it is, but like we work fast. Like people can't even fathom how we work as quick as we do. We just make quick decisions and, and I think it's, we work in the clinic first, So I think for me, it's really just kind of continuing to build my personal brand and, really kind of help guide my own identity alongside, being this leader in this men's health space.
Women's health now too.
Yeah, women's and men's health space.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Shea. Really, thank you for doing this podcast. And I'm super excited to see where, both brands go and then where you go personally too. You're going to do a lot of great things continually. So
thank you. I appreciate the time too.
thank you.